Welcome to the Creating Your Conditions podcast, a work of understanding the conditions we are given, the conditions we make for ourselves, and the conditions we have yet to forge. You can find us at Creating Your Conditions on Instagram, as well as on my YouTube channel at The Venn Diagram. That's THEVIN, and then diagram is DIAGRAM. My name is Vin. I use they, them, theirs pronouns, and I am your host. In today's episode, I am interviewing Naomi Giancola, who is a data scientist from Brooklyn, New York. They graduated from Smith College in 2023 with a degree in government and statistical and data sciences. Naomi is passionate about making the world a better place for as many people, animals, and plants as possible. Their current day job is at America Needs You, an economic mobility nonprofit. Naomi also does freelance work where they work with PhD and master students on the data analysis section of their dissertations or theses. While work is an extremely important part of Naomi's life, it is not the only part. They have many hobbies, some might say too many, such as reading, playing soccer, hiking, rock climbing, running, and biking, to name a few. Naomi identifies as a non-binary trans person and is committed to anti-capitalist, radical trans-inclusive feminist principles and is vegan for the plants and animals of our world. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Very happy to be here with you, my friend. And I wonder who wrote that bio. It was really good and so interesting. We'll never know.
Catchy. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I only edited it like 50 times, so no biggie.
Well, now you've outed yourself, but...
Oh, no!
I didn't know you were vegan.
Yes, yeah. I've been vegan since like the pandemic, so 2020, but I've been vegetarian since I was 16.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah, so just made the transition a couple of years after. But yeah, it's going well.
Nice. That's cool.
Yeah.
We haven't had a meal together yet because we're
We
co-workers, but we live in different states, so.
We live literally almost as far as you can get while still living in the same country.
Yep.
Unless you had like lived in Hawaii or something and I was in New York, but
yeah.
Oh
man. Okay, future veg meal make that happen.
I'm excited.
Well, thanks for being on the podcast. And so you said this a little bit in your bio, but why don't you share like where you grew up and what was growing up like for you?
So I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. I've actually lived in the same house my whole life. My parents were lucky enough to be able to buy a Brooklyn brownstone, which is an extreme rarity now, but wasn't as rare back in the 90s in my neighborhood. And so I've grown up there my whole life. I lived on the same block. I've had the same neighbors. So my sense of community was luckily really consistent. And the people around me, I loved and they supported me. And growing up was really fun. I loved being a kid. I loved being able to explore New York and Brooklyn, even just my block on my own terms. I had relatively supportive parents. They made sure that I could kind of do whatever I wanted whenever I wanted. I got to play in the backyard all the time. I played sports. I played pretend with my younger sister. So pretty good childhood overall.
Okay, it's cool. So tell me, because I am from Southern California mostly, and most of Southern California, like most of the United States, is suburban. So what was it like growing up in a city, like the biggest city in the country?
Well, I guess I'm biased since I grew up here, but I think it was the best place to grow up. I loved the independence that I had. I started going to school by myself when I was 11. So I would take the city bus with my friends.
And your parents taught you how to do that when you were younger than that, I'm guessing?
Oh yeah, I guess they did. I don't even really remember learning how to take the bus or the subway. I feel like I always just knew. Because I grew up going on it with my parents. And babysitters and anyone who would take me, honestly. I loved exploring. And yeah, so growing up and being really independent from a young age was great. I also was maybe too independent at sometimes. I used to like go to the deli near my house, not wearing shoes, which is silly in New York, but that's what I wanted to do. And so people would ask me on the street, they'd be like, "Oh my God, like, do you have shoes?" And I'm like a 7 year old running around being like, "I just want a candy bar from the deli." So, that's what growing up was like. Kind of crazy, but very fun.
Oh my gosh. It's the radical feminist in you.
No, right? I was like, no shoes, no oppressive
No
shoes.
shoes. No. Damn, that's wild. But it's really cool. And I'm guessing you have like visited other cities, right? Outside of like New
Yeah,
York.
yeah. Yeah, I've been to Boston, Philly, San Francisco, Houston, Austin. I've been so not to a lot of cities necessarily in the US, but to like a good amount. And I've been to Europe with
Yeah.
my parents as well, and to some cities there. And I still think New York is the best. So
Oh yeah. Yeah. I feel like if you're born and raised there, you're just made for it, you know?
exactly. It doesn't get better than here.
Low key jealous. I always like envy people's like stability, you know, because I moved a
Mm.
lot. Um, so always interesting. And I really like transit, and a city like New York actually prioritizes people getting to use their full neighborhoods and the full city.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. No, I have a hard time imagining myself living anywhere that doesn't have public transportation. Not because I can't drive, although maybe that's a fact. Maybe that's true, but that's okay. Um,
Maybe.
maybe I'm hiding like a secret skill. You don't know. Yeah. So,
This
anyways, I
line is
can't
not
drive,
going
but
well.
no, it's really not. But anyways, yeah, I love public transportation. Can't exist without it.
And so, since you've like been there your whole life, I'm guessing you've also just stayed in touch with a lot of the people that you grew up with in terms of friends or family members outside of like your immediate household.
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, like my neighbors have been the same since I was little. Some of them have been there since before I was born. So I still see the people that I grew up with all the time. I have some really close friends that I met in like first grade. So I still hang out with them. One of my friends, Rafi, shout out to Rafi. We've been friends since we were 6. And we still hang out all the time. We go rock climbing together and just, do all the things. It's really nice. Um, and yeah, it's great to just be around the same people. It's something that I'm very, very privileged to have.
Yeah, stability is hard to come by in a
Hmm.
country where there's so many immigrants, and especially New York, like also just still has a lot of influx of people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Let's see. What's the strongest characteristic you remember having as a child?
So I was looking at this question before we started, and I was like, what is the strongest characteristic? So one thing about my brain is that it's really bad at remembering things. So I don't actually remember a lot of my childhood. So I kind of rely off of like stories that my parents will tell me or my friends will tell me. So I guess not a characteristic that I necessarily remember, but that my mom always tells me about is that I was really interested in like keeping community and groups together. So one example is when I was in kindergarten, apparently like my class was like all fighting, like we weren't having a good time, we were as angsty as like 5 year olds could get in kindergarten. And so I announced to the class that we were going to do a conga line around the classroom. And my teacher was like, okay, weird. So apparently I lined everyone up and we started doing a conga line around the classroom. And miraculously, according to my mom, it solved a lot of the problems. It was just a collaborative thing to do, and we all like to dance. And I think that has kind of like that's been a consistent trait of mine, like throughout the years, not the conga line part, but the keeping groups together, and enjoying community. So yeah, it's a strange answer, but
That's cute. Oh my gosh, that's so wholesome. I wonder what your parents taught you to like suggest that, you know? Cuz
yeah,
or what
I
you
know.
saw.
I'm not sure. I mean, I guess, the stability really helped, like because I had such a stable sense of community since I was born. I guess I just wanted things to stay that way, and I always wanted to have that stability, so I tried to enforce it in whatever space I was in. So,
So one of your superpowers is conga line and community organizing.
exactly.
I love that. Um, I'm curious, like what your relationship with your parents was when you were growing up.
Yeah, so when I was a kid, I think I had a pretty positive relationship. My mom didn't work that much when I was younger, and my dad was an artist, and his studio was based out of our house. So both my parents were home a lot. And so they were there to like take us to the playground and take us around the city. My dad took us to a lot of museums. So I enjoyed growing up with them. But then as, tween years hit, puberty hit, I became a little rage monster. And I feel like that's the best way to describe it. And my relationship with my parents definitely got pretty rocky. I was really frustrated, like, as preteens and teens are. I wanted my independence. I wasn't getting it. My relationship definitely did not did not stay as positive in those years. And it's gotten a lot better now that I'm older, but I definitely do miss like the childhood of like being really close to my parents. But yeah.
And if you want to share, what were those conversations that like you kind of saw that tension from?
Yeah. I mean, so I'm queer. I'm a queer, trans, gay, lesbian, all of the above type person. And I didn't feel comfortable sharing that with my parents when I was younger. And I realized that I was definitely very different when I was maybe like 11 or 12. So there was a lot of me trying to hide that from them, but then not being very good at hiding it because I was very obviously queer. Um, but I didn't want to have those conversations. My parents didn't really ask me about it. And so it was kind of not the conversations themselves that showed the tension, but maybe the lack thereof.
Ooh. The things you could not say more than the
Exactly.
arguments you had. Okay.
Yep.
Hmm. How did you know you were queer or different at first when you were 11? I feel like that's pretty young, you know?
Yeah, no, it's really young. I remember the exact moment where I was like, oh my God, I'm gay. So I was in squash class, which is like a really fancy sport. It's the silliest sport. I don't know why people play it. But anyways, I was taking a squash class at like our local
Is that like
gym.
badminton or
And sort of, it's like tennis with a wall. Um,
Oh, okay,
so,
okay, okay.
yeah,
Got it.
it's like racquetball, if you know what
Okay, yeah, that was
racquetball is.
yeah, I've seen that at the gym.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was in squash class and I was really good at squash and I would like beat all the boys and like had no problem doing that. But every time I played this girl, I would get really nervous and not be able to hit as hard and I would stumble and I didn't get it. I was like, what is wrong with me? And then one day I kind of realized I was like, oh my God, do I have a crush on this girl? And that was it. And now I'm a lesbian. Don't take squash classes, guys. You'll become gay. Um,
Or do.
or do, or do. But that's when I realized I was gay, and then being trans and queer and all the gender things, I didn't actually really come to realize that until I was 20. So actually only like 3 years ago, but a lot has happened in those 3 years. But I think I was always queer. There were signs, I just didn't know what to look for in myself.
Yeah. Did you like cuz you're a couple years younger than me, so I'm curious if you like saw the word lesbian somewhere and then that clicked
Mm.
for you when you were 11? Like I don't know if you had social media um already at that
No,
age.
that's a good question. I didn't have social media at that age. I got an Instagram when I was 12, so this
Oh,
was
just
like
right
the summer
before. Okay.
before. Yeah, this was like the summer
Ah.
before I got an Instagram. But I had like these American Girl doll books called I think the Care and Keeping of You. So it was about like puberty and your body changing. And so I wonder if maybe I saw the word in there. Or maybe I'd just seen it on TV. Like I watch a lot of TV shows. I read a lot of books. Also, I was in Brooklyn. I'm sure I just heard it somewhere. Um, but yeah, I'm not really sure where I found that word, but I'm glad I did because we
Hmm.
should say lesbian more. It's a powerful word.
Yeah, I love that. It's cool you at least you knew it in yourself, even though you couldn't say it out loud to your parents yet.
Yep.
Did
Yeah.
you tell any friends?
I think I didn't tell friends until like seventh grade, I think. And even then, I had only told one friend, but then they actually told a bunch of my other friends. That's a whole story. So that was unfortunate. Um, but also, that was in seventh grade, and seventh graders are seventh graders. So, um, but yeah, I kind of kept it to myself for a while. But yeah.
Okay, got you. Hmm. It's always those silences, that we convince ourselves we need to be in, and then also
Hmm.
someone betrays our trust, so we continue to be in that silence because you're just like, well, so example A of why I shouldn't have said anything to anybody, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I was basically after that, after like the friend had told a bunch of my friends, like my whole middle school knew, so I was just the gay kid. And that was fine. I didn't really mind. But I guess I did start to mind when I got a bit older, so like in eighth grade, because when I went into high school, I didn't tell any of my high school friends that I was gay. I like kept that to myself until 11th grade, so like 2 years later. So I kind of had like two different coming outs.
Yeah. It's also like so much to hold in as a child?
Yeah, no, it is. It is. I do
Yeah.
feel for that little girl. So, yeah.
Yeah. Hmm. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's see. Where should we go next? It's interesting. I feel like I'm always like battling between like digging more into a specific topic or like exploring another one. But you said you did a lot of sports, like in high
Yes,
school, junior high, earlier.
all of the above. I was a very athletic kid. I sucked at sitting still, so I loved to just get up and run around. I was the kid in elementary school that was playing kickball with all the boys when the rest of the girls were like hanging out on the playground and talking. And I was like, no, I need to run. I need to kick things. So I started playing soccer when I was like, gosh, probably like 3 or 4, basically when I could walk and kick at the same
Wow.
time. Um, and I have played soccer since. I did gymnastics when I was younger. I took swimming classes in high school. I also played lacrosse. I started running in college. I've always biked. Yeah, I've always done sports. I'm a pretty athletic person.
Yeah, you really are. I think I'd forgotten that you started playing soccer when you were 3. Like,
I don't know if I told you that because it's
so
people are
young.
like, "What?" Yeah, no, my parents were like, "Please get the energy out."
Yeah, so young. That's cool though, but why sports? Why is that your outlet versus like other stuff? Could be art.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you do art, but there's a lot of activities you could choose, but you kind of stuck to sports even now.
Yeah, I was actually just talking to someone about this. I wonder if it was you. I don't remember though. But I I think I stuck with sports because it's the only time that my brain turns off. So I'm just constantly thinking. My brain is always moving, and sometimes I really need a break from that. And literally, the only time it will stop and give me a break is if I am completely focused on something that my body is doing. And sports is that for me. If I'm playing soccer and I'm focused, I am not thinking about anything else. The rest of the world does not matter to me if I'm playing. Same thing with like lacrosse, kind of any team sport. I'm not this really the same way with running or individual things like rock climbing because you got a lot of time to just think when you run unless you have the music
Yeah.
really loud. But soccer especially was just always a way that I could just turn off and just exist for an hour.
Hmm. And what did you like learn about your body through sports over time?
My body is very resilient. It can do a lot of things and it bounces back very quickly, which I am very lucky. I Yeah, I've been injured and come back a lot faster than a lot of doctors think. So that's fun about my body. And also, it's really fun to have a body. And to have a body that can do the things that you ask it to do. I'm very privileged and lucky to be able to run around and kick soccer balls whenever I want to. Um, yeah, it's it's wonderful. I guess I don't know that I've necessarily learned anything about my body besides that I'm so thankful for it.
I think you also started so young too, so like that's like to your timeline's advantage. Like your repair will always be better than somebody who just started working out. Like not that it's ever
True.
too late, but your body's very used to the impact of like running
Yes,
and like pivoting and like all these other like kinds of impact. It's cool.
definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you ever consider doing sports in college?
Yes, actually. So I
Like
I was
collegiately, I guess, not just for
yeah.
funsies.
Yeah, so I was actually recruited to play soccer at Smith, where I got my undergrad degree from. And I was supposed to be on the soccer team. I show up for preseason. I'm pretty excited. And then suddenly it's like really serious and not very fun to play soccer. And the reason I had played soccer was because I loved it, and I also happened to be good at it, which was great for playing in high school and playing competitively. But I never played it because I was good at it. And then suddenly in college, you played it because you were good at it, and it wasn't necessarily to enjoy the game. And I really did not like that. So I quit like a week in the preseason and I was like, I'm not doing this anymore because this is not fun. And I play soccer to have fun. So yeah, so I was supposed to play collegiately and then I did not.
Mm. Yeah, we can talk about college in a little bit, but I'm glad
Yeah.
you knew that about yourself. Like, to be like, this isn't what I want soccer for, Like,
Yeah.
because, schools play sports so that they can get money and sponsorships and then get you to a pro level.
Hmm.
But it's not for fun. It's for winning, right? Like,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, and I don't really care about winning. If you looked at my stats from high school, you will see that very clearly. All my
Yeah.
teams have sucked. But
Yeah.
that's okay. I'm very happy to be on them.
Yeah. It's just to play and like improve at your pace, not like
Exactly.
the rate of winning.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's cool. I'm really
Yeah.
glad you knew that because you were like 18, like
Yeah.
whenever you went to
No, I
college, and you're like,
know.
you know, this isn't the way I want to play soccer. I'm gonna walk away now.
I agree. I'm very thankful for my brain because I ended up having a really great college experience, and I think if I had been on a soccer team, I don't think I would have had as good an experience.
Hmm. So what prompted you to go to Smith and like what did you I mean you mentioned what you studied there, but like why there? What were your other options? Like what else did you consider? Like did you consider moving
So Smith kind of,
further
I
away?
don't want to say,
Further away.
yeah. Smith kind of like, I guess, fell into my lap, so to speak. So I had been touring colleges, and Smith was a school that I really liked. It was going to be my number one pick to begin with. But then I got nominated for the Posse Scholarship, and I went through like a bunch of rounds of interviews, and I ended up winning the scholarship, and I was
Oh,
placed
tell
at Smith College.
okay. Tell the folks what posse is or like the
Oh,
foundation
yes.
and yeah, the
Yeah,
scholarship.
so Posse is a full tuition leadership scholarship. So the Posse Foundation finds and recruits young, outstanding leaders from high schools and then sends them in quote unquote posses, so groups of 10, to elite universities to make the universities better and to better themselves as a group. And so in high school, I was selected as of one of 10 students to go to Smith College in my posse. And yeah, so that's what posse is. And then I was explaining something else. Oh, how Smith kind of fell into my lap. Yes. So then I was accepted into Smith with posse, and that's how I ended up going to Smith. And it was the best decision ever, and kind of the best thing that ever happened to me. I love Smith.
So it was it's really cool you found that scholarship. It sounds also really intentional. That's like a as an organization, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, actually, my first job was at Posse. So I really believe in the mission, and it was a wonderful scholarship, and it really did change my life. And also, funny enough, I didn't actually find Posse, so you have to be nominated for Posse. And so my guidance counselor in high school nominated me for it, and I actually didn't want to do it. I didn't want to go to the interview, and I was like, oh, like, I don't know, like, I don't feel like I'm qualified for this. I don't think I'll get it. I think it will be a waste of time. And then here I am now. So
Yeah.
it ended up working out pretty well.
Yeah. Shouts to those guidance counselors because I had one in high school too, and she presented a scholarship opportunity for an org that's like an international co-ed nonprofit, and I ended up rushing for it in college, and I was in it for 5 years.
Wow.
And like it's still like the probably the most impactful thing that I was in college because I
Mm.
just met a lot of people, and like there was chapters everywhere, so I met people in other like states as well. So those college counselors or high school counselors, they're just like throwing random stuff at you. They actually know what they're doing. So just at least look at whatever flyer they just handed
Right.
you.
Listen to your guidance counselor. Shout out to Miss Lane and Miss Allen. Thanks for changing my life.
I feel like their roles, I feel, are much less casework, right? And they're just trying to get you to a next thing. So it feels like so much more tangible than like being a teacher and like having to deal with a student
Hmm.
for like hours at a time. Um, but it's cool. I'm
Yeah.
glad that that's how you heard about them. And they
Yeah.
nominated you because they were like, Naomi will
Yeah.
be fine on doing this, you know?
Yeah, no, I also definitely spent many hours with Miss Lane and Miss Allen. I was their case.
You were casework.
Exactly.
Um, so tell me about your experience at Smith and like what you studied, because government and data is kind of like a public policy master's degree. So tell me about why you did that and like what it was like in those majors.
Yeah, so I actually went into Smith intending to be a physics major. But which I
Okay.
know, I saw your
Damn. All
confused face,
right.
like, okay, what the fuck?
Yeah,
How
but
did that
the
happen?
math data side of you, like that would make sense. You know, it's not out of the realm.
Yes.
But I was like thrown out for a little bit.
Yeah. So I intended to be a physics major, but then part of Posse's programming is sending the posse, so the group of 10, to the college that they're going to be attending in the fall. They send us to the college for like a 2 week session over summer. And you just get to meet professors and hear about their research. And one of the professors that I met was named Miles Ott. I will remember him. He was also a Smithy, I think class of 2005, something like that. And
Smithy,
he,
is that what you call them? Smithy?
Smithy.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Smithies. Got it.
So he was a statistical and data sciences professor, and he was doing research on trans people. And I was like, oh my God, I have to absolutely meet with this professor and learn more about his research on trans people. And that was my segue into statistical and data sciences. I just kind of figured out that in statistical and data sciences, you can basically do whatever you want as long as you can quantify it. And I was obsessed with that. I liked physics because it kind of encompassed everything about the world, and statistical and data sciences is pretty similar in that. And it's also a lot easier to understand, which I appreciated. So I was definitely drawn to that. And then the government major, I had taken AP Gov in high school, and I just loved it. I was obsessed with like learning about how the American government system works, and I wanted to learn more about other types of government. And so it kind of just made sense for me to major in government. Um, yeah, so that's kind of how my majors happened.
Okay. So since you got really excited when you were talking about like quantifying things, and this makes sense for what I know about you. So like, what was it like, kind of um going from like, oh, this is how my brain works best, to seeing a major that aligned with it? At least that's what I'm getting from that answer.
Yes. Yeah, no, it was I mean, not to be cliche, it was groundbreaking, but like it kind of was. I'd always loved numbers. Math was always one of my best subjects, the other best subject being physics, so makes sense. Um, and realizing that I could spend my life helping other people figure out what numbers mean, was just kind of a like an aha moment. I didn't really realize that there were actually people behind the graphs in the New York Times articles that you read, or the Wall Street Journal. Um, and I realized that I wanted to be that person. And it kind of happened overnight, genuinely, after I talked to Miles. I was like, oh, I can do this. Yeah, it was great. It was such a nice moment.
Ooh. What was some of the data that you got from like that presentation?
Oh gosh, let's see if I remember. Um, I just remember, I mean, I remember specifically it was about trans people, and I was like, trans people. This was before I knew I was like a queer
Mm.
trans person in general, and now I'm like, oh, it makes sense that I was drawn to that. Um, I think it was. I don't want to give a wrong answer, so I actually I don't have an answer to that question. I'll have to look up the research again. It's gone out of my mind by now.
That's okay. I'd be curious to know. You can send it to me. I'll
Yeah,
find. That'd be cool.
absolutely will.
That's cool. And it sounds like you stayed in touch with this professor, lecturer too.
So actually, no.
Oh,
I took. I'm just obsessed with his work. Or I guess I was obsessed. I'm
it's
not as
fair.
obsessed now. But no, I'd only met with him that once, and then I took one of his classes, and he was a great professor. But he ended up getting a job elsewhere, so he left Smith my sophomore year. So I never really
Okay.
got to like connect with him on a deeper level, but I still appreciate his work, and his he literally changed the trajectory of my life as well after one
Yeah.
conversation. So yeah,
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you ever feel up to it, but you could always email and find them.
that's true. Maybe I will. Maybe I will. I think I'm friends with him on LinkedIn. I'll figure it out.
Oh, nice, nice. Yeah, I reconnected with one of my professors last year, and it's just nice having like that intergenerational knowledge and like that shared
Hmm.
major experience, you know? So you're like,
Yeah.
did impact me because of the thing you already study and like research on. It's cool.
Yeah. No, definitely. Good to know.
Yeah, you never know. You
Yeah.
Smithies gotta stick together. So I hear.
Oh yeah, no, Smith Network is great.
So tell me what it was like. What else it was like going to school at Smith. Like what kind of. So you live there. And I forget where it is. Is it in New York or is it?
It's in Massachusetts, so
It's in
Western
Massachusetts.
Mass.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So what was it like going to school there? What kind of programming did you have in terms of like where you lived? And then, yeah, what else did you do on your free time?
Yeah. So Smith is a really unique college in that it's a historically women's college, and it is still predominantly women. They do not admit cis men. So I got to spend 4 years of my life surrounded by really powerful non-cis men, and that was low key the best 4 years of my life ever. Um, I it was just incredible, and also about Smith is that like everyone's queer. Not everyone, but a lot of people, the majority of people are queer. I think they did a survey in the 80s, and like 90% of the student population said they were queer, and that was in the 80s, so who knows what it's like now. But yeah, so it's a very queer very empowering, very feminist space. Um, and like it kind of that kind of ideals just kind of seeps into everything that Smith does. So the programming was just always around like how can we make ourselves in the world a better place, and I think that's also why I loved Smith so much, was because it really had everything that I hold really true to me, and so I saw that in the institution. I was like, excellent. um, but yeah, I spent a lot of time just hanging out with my friends on campus in a place where there aren't a lot of cis men. And I will say that trans men are at Smith, but they are not admitted to Smith. But if you transition while you're at Smith, they're not going to kick you out. And trans women are admitted to Smith, and non-binary people. Or I guess, well, Smith is kind of fancy. They say non-binary women are allowed at Smith. So yeah,
Ooh.
anyways. But yeah, so Smith has everyone except cis men, and apparently non-binary men, whatever that means. Um, but yeah, so I spent most of my time at Smith just hanging out with my friends and exploring the campus, which is beautiful. And Western Mass is gorgeous. There's mountains and lakes and rail trails to bike on. So I spent a lot of time hiking and biking and running, which
Yeah.
are three of my favorite hobbies. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Would is the area around Smith, in that part of Western Massachusetts, is it like representative of the demographic at Smith?
Um, I think no, actually. So Western Mass and Northampton, well, actually let me rephrase that. So the area surrounding Smith, like the immediate area, is definitely predominantly white people. Um, and Smith is predominantly white, but they also have been putting a lot of effort into recruiting not white students. And Posse is part of that. Um, and so I think like the immediate area around Smith is not very representative, but in terms of like political views, Northampton is extremely liberal. And a lot of Smithies come and live in Northampton after graduation. So in terms of that, it's pretty representative. But then Northampton as a whole, like the whole, I guess, county or town, I'm not sure what it's considered. Um, I think I didn't spend that much time exploring like the greater Northampton area because I can't drive. Um, but I think it's a bit more representative. But
Okay.
I also don't know. That was a really good question. I'll have to look into
I
that more.
actually That's okay. I actually meant gender wise. But
Oh,
that's also
oops.
very interesting. No, that's okay. I was
Yeah.
like, wait, are demographics just race and ethnicity? No, it's like
No,
gender's part of that,
demographics are
right?
everything.
Okay, okay,
Yes.
cool, cool. I was like second guessing myself. I was like,
Oh
shit,
my God,
Naomi's a
no.
data person. I'm probably wrong. But yeah, I meant
No,
gender wise.
I
Whenever
think
you
because of the upcoming election, I'm like demographics equals race and ethnicity, but that is not always true. Um, but yeah, in terms of gender, it's I feel like I've read that Northampton has like the highest lesbian population in the States, so pretty representative
That's
there.
so cool.
Um, it's really cool. It's really awesome. And then, I think the rest of it is like there's cis men around. A lot of my professors were cis men. Um, like Smith itself is kind of a bubble. So it's a lot, it's pretty like, not like closed off. I don't know. I'm not saying this right. But I guess the surrounding area is not as representative. So there's definitely more women at Smith than in the surrounding area.
Yeah, I was just curious because like that's also very true of most colleges, right? Like you think of colleges like Harvard or like Yale, like they're campuses in like the middle of nowhere, and like the city
Yeah.
outside of it is like a very small circumference, you know. So
Hmm.
the school is the city, which makes sense, you know, because
Yeah.
it's also just cheaper to have an institution out in like a suburb than like a city like New York.
Right. Yeah, no. Smith is
Um,
actually pretty cool in that it's like directly next to the city of, well, it's called the city, it's a town of Northampton. So Smith is pretty ingrained with like the local scene going on.
okay.
Yeah.
So what was it like? Did you like go home to New York every now and then between like holidays and stuff?
Yeah. Yeah, so I would go home for most of the breaks. So like Thanksgiving, I was home. Christmas break, I was home. My one spring break, I was home because COVID interrupted my undergrad. So I actually only had one full spring semester on campus. And I guess, I didn't actually go home for that. I went on a vacation with my friends. Um, but yeah, I was going back and forth from Smith to New York a lot. But luckily, Northampton has an Amtrak stop, so it wasn't too difficult, and there are lots of buses.
Okay. I was I'm gonna pin the COVID question because I didn't even think about that because of our I
Yeah,
forget our age difference sometimes, and I'm like, oh
yeah,
right, like COVID was like during actually during a significant part of your life where you're like trying to do
yeah.
the school thing. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah, that's interesting. So like, what was it like leaving Smith and then like going into like the regular world because the bubble is very different. Like
Yeah,
you talk about other college campuses having a culture, but this is like a demographic culture. Like it
yeah.
just changes the way you see things, because you only see X kinds of people for the most part. For the most part.
Hmm. Yeah. It was really hard transitioning back into the real world after coming from the wonderful bubble that is Smith College. I just did not really interact with cis men really at all in undergrad unless they were my professors. And so I didn't, I guess, have like the typical being in STEM as a not cis man experience of like having people talk over me and not raising my hand and being anxious to answer questions because I didn't know if I was right and then I was going to look dumb. Of course, those thoughts were in my head, but they were absolutely lessened by the fact that there was not going to be a cis man sitting next to me rolling his eyes or like thinking that I was stupid. And then coming back into the real world and having to interact again with those kinds of people was pretty jarring. Um, I am still adjusting, I would say. And I mean, luckily,
Mm.
like working at nonprofits, it is predominantly women. So I don't really have to interact with that a lot. But even just like existing in Brooklyn and New York City now is different than it was to exist on Smith campus and in Northampton. Yeah.
Yeah, I bet I would just be like, why can't we all just treat each other better?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Hmm. So you mentioned that COVID was that your like second year of college then?
No, so
Or-
COVID interrupted my second semester of my first year. So I,
Just you barely
yeah,
made it to spring. Oh my gosh.
yeah,
In 2020.
yeah.
Okay.
So
Wow.
yeah, I started college in 2019, and so I had my fall semester, and then spring 2020 was my second semester, and we got sent home, and then we did remote school for the rest of that year, and then the next. So the next time that I was like back to normal learning and on campus was the fall of 2021. So that was my junior year. So it had a
And so that whole
significant
time,
impact.
yeah. So you went home? You went back to New York?
So I was back in New
Oh.
York for spring 2020 and then fall 2020. And then they let about half of the student population come back to campus for the spring of 2021. So my sophomore spring. And so I was back on campus for that semester, but it was still remote learning. So I was just sitting in my dorm, taking Zoom classes, which was definitely interesting. But then we went back to in-person learning in the fall of 2021, so my junior year fall.
Dang.
Yeah.
So you like entered this like bubble of like, wow, this is how a
Hmm.
world could be like you said earlier, an institution set up this way, right? For like non cis men, basically. And largely women too having to get interrupted because of, a major
Global
health
pandemic.
crisis
Yep.
in the world. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah. It
Wow.
sucked to like leave just as I was getting adjusted and like getting really excited about all the opportunities that Smith had to offer. Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm not even gonna like butt that. had a huge impact on my education and my trajectory. So yeah, it sucked, not gonna lie. But also it was a global pandemic. Like that's what what's Smith gonna do about it? So
Yeah.
yeah.
And you did get your junior and senior year there?
Yeah, so my junior and senior year were both on campus, fully in person, but I studied abroad the spring of my junior year. So I only had one full year on campus, which was my senior year.
Okay, got you. Where'd you study abroad?
I went to Denmark.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I went with my friends, so it was awesome.
Yeah. What did you like what kind of classes did you take over there?
Yeah, so I had intended to go over there, and I don't really know what I was thinking. I wanted to do a bunch of like environmental science stuff.
Oop.
So I had like signed up for all these environmental science classes, and then kind of last minute I panicked and I was like, I don't know anything about environmental science. And so I switched to taking a bunch of like international law classes. So I took a class on humanitarian law and armed conflict, which was super, super interesting.
Whoa.
And I honestly, I'm so thankful I had that last minute panic because it ended up being really great. And my class took a trip to Kosovo, which is a country in the Balkans that I never would have gone to unless my professor was like, we're going. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. So, and I also took like some classes about like the Danish education system. I took Danish, the language, so I can say a couple words, not very well. Um, but yeah, it was a really cool experience.
Ooh. I'm glad you were still able to make the most of your college experience and like get that like out of the country experience because I think a lot of
Yeah.
Americans don't have that ability because the country is so big and income levels here is different, like not a lot of programs like
Yeah.
that exist, so but it's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Very lucky.
Arms class though.
Yeah. But it was about like international law surrounding war. So we didn't like learn
Mm.
about like this is how you like launch a missile. Like
This is that
we
you're
learned
like,
like
what accent is that? Is that your Texan
you
accent?
know,
Sorry.
I guess so. It's like my I'm a
Relax.
big strong man and I'm going to kill everyone. I don't know. Anyways, um but yeah, no, we learned about like refugee politics, like what the rules, quote unquote, rules of war are, so how to keep civilians safe, like that kind of thing. So it wasn't about the arms part
Yeah.
necessarily.
Yeah. More general, more broad war
Exactly.
terms.
Yeah. Yeah.
Got you.
Casually.
Uh, cool, cool. What, let's see. After your senior year, what did you, like, how did you decide where you were gonna go next?
Yeah, I decided where I was gonna go next because it was the first job that I got. So I
Nice.
had been, of course, applying like a madman to jobs in my final semester of undergrad and panicking because I wasn't getting anything. And I was like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? And then finally, I got referred to a job at Posse, where I got my scholarship from. And I was able to work in the career and alumni programs there, and it was absolutely wonderful. Such a great first job. I learned so much. I had incredible managers. Shout out to Jen and Elizabeth. They were amazing. And my coworkers were also great. Brandon and Nicole and Peter. I just got really lucky with my first job. Um, and even though I loved the job and I loved my coworkers, it wasn't what I wanted to be doing necessarily. I really wanted a role in data science, and to be able to use what I'd learned in undergrad and help people understand numbers. And I wasn't doing that in my first job. And that's how I ended up here at America Needs You. I guess not here. That's how I ended up at America Needs You.
I think you said here because
Doing,
I'm here.
yeah, yeah, I think
You're
so
like, we're
too.
at work right now. We're not at work
Oh
right
my
now.
God. No, we're not at work right now. I swear. Um, No, but that's how I ended up at America Needs You doing data science and helping everyone better understand numbers.
Cool. Into that.
Yeah.
Hmm. So many numbers, so many demographics.
Oh, yes. All the numbers, all the demographics in our Salesforce database.
Um, let's see. Hmm. I think you're my youngest guest that I've had too, so this is interesting for
I'm
me.
honored. Wow. Oh, yeah, because like there's no talking about after early adulthood because I'm still in it.
You're in it, yeah, which is still cool. I think in our conversation, I've already seen you like you obviously can pull from your childhood and early adulthood
Mhm.
more easily. For the other folks that I've spoken to, that's like decades ago, so there's like a different
Yeah.
glaze to the way that they talk about it. Um, but I guess I want to ask you like what do you call this chapter of your life now?
Oh, what do I call this chapter of my life?
Yeah,
I
if
don't
it was
know.
a
I feel
chapter in a
like,
book, then like what would
yeah,
that chapter be?
I feel like, I mean, kind of cliche, but like finding myself, I think. Because like I obviously spent a lot of time like figuring out who I was in college, but now I am an adult with an income and I live not with my parents and I am for the first time in my life I can do whatever I want whenever I want. And it's weird, but it's extremely liberating. And I'm finding out so much about myself and what I like to do. And it's pretty consistent with what I've done in the past. Like, I still love to play soccer, I still love to read. But I'm finding that I actually enjoy like spending time with myself and alone time more than I thought that I did. And it's great. It's wonderful. And it gives me even more time to figure out who I am and find myself.
How different would you say you are from like 18-year-old you who just started college?
Pretty different. Um, 18-year-old Naomi was absolutely a teenager. I mean, like, I was dumb. I liked to drink with my friends. I stayed out late. I, like, would run around campus drunk and screaming in French, like, being an idiot and being a teenager. Which, as I should have, I do not feel any type of way about that. I am glad I got to be a teenager and be stupid. But I think I have just learned so much in the past 5 years, which is not that much time, but I'm just a completely different person, and I think I'm a lot more stoic. I just kind of take things as they come, which I did not do before. I was very anxious. Um, and I think I like myself a lot more too, which
Hmm.
is really nice.
Yeah. Do you speak French, by the way?
Un petit peu, a little bit.
Oh, okay.
I I took French in middle school and high school, and then I took a semester in college. So I can whip it out if I need to, but I'm not great.
Okay, because you said like running around when you were drunk screaming French, and I was like, what? Because you
Yeah,
also
no,
texted
I
me
used to be a lot
earlier, you're
better.
like really excited, and I was like, you speak French?
Yeah,
Nice, nice.
I I like French. It's fun.
Cool. Do you know any other languages?
Well, besides my one semester of Danish, I so I have New York Spanish, which is not actual, like I can't really speak Spanish, but I can understand a significant amount of it. Also, one
Okay.
of my best friends, Giselle, speaks Spanish, and me and her and two of our other friends went to Costa Rica 2 years ago. And before we went, we like had a day where we were only speaking to each other in Spanish, and I actually understood a lot more than I thought I did. So I was very impressed
Okay.
with myself. But it's only the
Okay.
New York Spanish. I don't actually know anything else. But yeah, so technically I'm slightly quadlingual, I guess, but absolutely not. So
Nice, nice. Cool. I like two more questions for you. What What are the like, conditions that you want to create for yourself?
Oh, I was waiting for the condition question. Um, I I honestly, like in the past year, I feel like I spent a lot of time thinking about like where I want to be. And I guess the answer is I still don't know. I'm kind of stuck between I love living in New York City and I love like giving to organizations that have strong missions, but I also don't feel as connected to individual people as I wish I was. And so I'm kind of also battling this like I want to create my own like intentional community and just surround myself with people that I want to learn from and want to learn from me and just kind of, commune vibes casually. Um,
Very queer.
but very,
Very,
very
very
queer. I know I'm
common
like,
whenever I talk to like queer folks. They're like, I want a commune. I'm like, okay, yeah,
it's
I've heard
just,
that.
it's like the best way. Yeah. So I would also like love to live in the woods in a commune. And I'm really stuck in between those two worlds right now. And right now I'm living the New York life. But I want to just try out other lives as well. So I'm not really sure what conditions I like want to create for myself yet. I still have to figure it out.
Okay, cool. Those are good questions to ask yourself, though. Like,
Yeah.
I know what this is like. I know what living in New York and being bred in this like city is like. But I also know what going to school out over there looked like.
hmm Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. My last question is if you have a message for our listeners.
Oh, a message for our listeners. Hmm. Um, kind of, again, kind of cliche, but like, enjoy yourself. Like, I feel like I spent a lot of my adolescence and teenage years and even up to like last year, like, not really liking myself and not really spending enough time enjoying myself. And since I've like lived on my own and figured out what I like, I enjoy spending time with myself more and I actually like who I am. And I would say like try and like who you are because you're stuck with them for the rest of your life. Um but it's
It's
also a
true.
great thing to like who you are. It's fun. Yeah, I guess that's my little message.
Yeah, I love that. I think a lot of people, myself included, like struggle with really caring for and liking ourselves. So
hmm
it's a good one.
Yeah.
Um, so thanks for sharing your experience on the podcast. Where can our listeners find you or reach you?
Yes, I am on LinkedIn, Naomi Giancola. I'm on Instagram, Naomi Giancola. I also have a website for my freelance work, NDAC, Naomi's Data Analysis Consulting, which I'll send to Vin, and maybe they'll link it, maybe they won't. That's okay.
I want to see it.
And I'll send it to you then. And that's it. I mean, you can find me on Spotify, I guess, but that's it.
Cool. Wait, you have something else on Spotify?
Oh no, just like my personal, you can like see what kind of crap I listen to, but
Oh, okay, okay.
yeah.
Cool. I'll be looking for that. Cool. Alrighty. Thanks again for being on the show. Appreciate you as a friend, and I'm glad we got this space to deep dive into your life a little bit.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was a really nice experience.
Cool. I, yeah, cool. And thank you for listening to this episode of Creating Your Conditions, a work of understanding conditions we are given, forged from, and we have yet to face. You can follow us on Instagram at Creating Your Conditions, which you can also find in the description of this episode. My name is Van, and it's been my pleasure to be your host. Keep creating, and I'll catch you in the next episode.